Chapter 4697. Yin Shirshir took a deep breath and said, I know. I won't let my imagination run wild anymore. Muyaja smiled, feeling gratified. He rubbed the back of her neck and leaned over. Just when he was about to kiss her on the lips, the sound of footsteps came from the side. It seemed that the person had seen this scene and was a little embarrassed, so he stopped abruptly. Muyaja and Yin Shirshir turned their heads and saw Yueyao shuffling her slippers and blinking her eyes as she stood rooted to the ground. She immediately covered her eyes and tactfully turned her back. I didn't see anything. Yin Shirshir wanted to pull away, but Muyaja hugged her tightly and didn't allow her to break free. They were husband and wife, and kissing was just a daily thing. It wasn't something that she felt guilty about, so there was nothing shameful about it. On the other hand, Yueyao was tactful enough to know that she had accidentally seen something that she shouldn't have peeked at. She also knew that it was inappropriate to look at something like that, so she immediately covered her eyes. In fact, since young, it was common for the children to see the couple being intimate occasionally. However, the children would be very happy about it. There is nothing more blissful than having a father and mother care about each other. When the parents had a good relationship, the children would also feel gratified. Yueyao pursed her lips and snickered. She immediately turned around and hurried into the room. Yin Shirshir was extremely embarrassed. However, Muyaja laughed at her. What's there to be embarrassed about? It's not good for the child to see it. What's not good about it? Muyaja laughed. She'll have a family sooner or later, and she'll have a husband. Besides, kissing is common in movies. There's nothing shameful about it. The more he said, the closer he got to her. The two people's lips met again, and they were pressed together. Yueyao secretly hid in a corner and looked at the scene of Muyaja and Yin Shirshir kissing. She covered her mouth and snickered. Just as the ruckus in the room finally subsided, Yin Shirshir wrapped her arms around his waist and rested her head on his chest. Suddenly, she lamented, Actually, if I think about it carefully, life is really short. How so? I still vaguely feel that giving birth to Yueyao was only yesterday. Even the scene of you taking care of me and Yueyao during my confinement period is still vivid in my mind. Muyaja's lips curled into a smile. Suffering is often longer, but happiness is always short. I've calculated it. Even if we can live to 100 years old, you see, there are less than 20,000 days left. 20,000 days? How do you calculate it? 365 days multiplied by 60 years. Yin Shirshir did a rough calculation. Muyaja hadn't really thought about this problem. After all, a man's mind wasn't as meticulous as a woman's. However, when he heard that the two of them had less than 20,000 days left together, he couldn't help but sigh. Why did you suddenly think of this question? I saw a video today of an old couple. The wife was in her 90s. At the end of her life, her husband held her hand and said, I'm yours. Love you. I don't know why, but my tears fell when I saw it. She didn't think that she was a very emotional woman. However, when she saw this video, she seemed to think about it. Suddenly, she felt that when the day of parting came, it would be hard for them to part. Muyaja hugged her even tighter. Chapter 4698. Yueyao was lying on the bed with a poster pasted in the middle of the headboard. On the poster was a handsome young man with rosy lips and white teeth facing the camera. The young man looked to be about 17 years old. His exquisite features, well-defined contours, and pure eyes made one's heart race. It was as if they had returned to the time of their first love. In the corner of the poster, Jing Yang's signature was strong and vigorous like a swimming dragon. It was hard to imagine that such beautiful handwriting was written by this young man. This was Jing Yang's poster when he first debuted. In the blink of an eye, it had been 2 years since his debut. Even though Jing Yang had taken many posters after that, Yueyao had always kept this pictorial, which was taken when he first debuted and released his album. Every time before going to bed, she would lie on top of the pictorial and gently kiss his cheek before she could fall asleep peacefully. However, today, Yueyao hesitated as she looked at the pictorial and did not lean over. She looked at the young man with a gentle smile in the pictorial with some annoyance. She did not know when he would look at her with such a gentle smile. She opened WeChat. Her conversation with Jing Yang was always pinned at the top. However, he had not replied to her messages for a few days. Even when he did reply, it was cursory and cold. The 18-year-old Wei Yao was experiencing her first awakening of love. She had an obscure yearning for the boy she loved. However, this yearning was not known to others. Even to Yun Shirshir and Mu Yaja, she did not mention this little secret. She had liked Jing Yang for a long time. The two were childhood sweethearts and had a close relationship since they were young. However, due to an unforeseen event when they graduated from high school, Jing Yang's attitude toward her suddenly turned cold and distant. They were no longer as close as before. In the past, be it Yin Tianyu or Mu Yiqin, they did not dote on her as much as he did. Now they were like strangers. Was it because of that incident? Wei Yao hugged her phone guiltily and pondered for a moment. Finally, she sent him a cute emoji. Brother Jing Yang, I've calculated that it's going to be your second anniversary soon. I heard from Mommy that your anniversary celebration will be held together with your birthday fan club. The message had been sent. However, there was no response for a long time. Wei Yao felt a little wronged, but he couldn't bear to put down his phone, so he held it in his hand and quietly waited for her reply. After a long while, the message notification that he had been waiting for still did not ring out. Instead, she unknowingly fell asleep just like that. Bali Apartments. After Jing Yang finished showering, he picked up his phone and lay down on the sofa. As he waited for his hair to dry naturally, he habitually opened WeChat. Amidst the long list of messages, a message from Wei Yao appeared in his line of sight. Jing Yang frowned slightly. After a moment of hesitation, he opened it with a frown. Seeing Wei Yao's message, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly, but he still didn't reply. Including this message, there were dozens of messages that he had not replied to. She was already used to his indifference. Jing Yang exited WeChat and threw his phone on the sofa. The phone bounced on the sofa and fell to the ground, but he was too lazy to pick it up. Chapter 4699. The night gradually darkened. Bai Ran was a little uncomfortable with the bed. She tossed and turned and couldn't sleep well. The Gu residence was decorated in Chinese style. The room they were sleeping in had been renovated into a new Chinese style. The so-called New Chinese style abandoned many of the more repetitive Chinese styles. It took the essence of the Chinese style and added a modern and fashionable understanding. However, the solid wood bed was a little hard. In addition, she was uncomfortable with the bed. Bai Ran couldn't sleep no matter how hard she tried. Gu Qingze, who was next to her, was also half awake from her tossing and turning. He said in his sleep, "What's wrong? Ah, did I wake you up?" Bai Ran was startled. The voice that suddenly sounded in her ear caught her off guard. Gu Qingze rubbed his eyes and pulled her into his arms. He first pinched her nose and said a little angrily, "It's so late and you're still awake. What's wrong?" I'm uncomfortable with the bed. I can't sleep." "Why can't you sleep?" Gu Qingze was even more awake. He opened his sleepy eyes. In the room, the wall lamp was still on. Under the light, Bai Ran looked at him innocently and said with a little grievance, "Maybe the bed is too hard." Hard? Gu Qingze was used to sleeping in it since he was young. He explained, "For as long as I can remember, the Gu residence was decorated in an antique style. Later, my mother felt that these decorations were a little too lifeless. Many of the rooms were renovated. In the past, before the renovation, he had always been very careful. This was because it was very likely that a vase placed in the room was a priceless antique. Gu Jinglian liked to collect antiques. In addition, the Gu family used to be a wealthy family. Many of the antiques that were passed down were more precious. Chu Ho was used to cleaning her room carefully. After almost knocking over antique vases and dressing mirrors several times, she repeatedly emphasized that the old residence should be renovated. Gu Jinglian naturally listened to her. Therefore, after the renovation, many of the precious items in the Gu residence were displayed in the ancestral hall. This residence has probably been around for many years. I remember that many Hong Kong-style ghost movies I watched when I was young were shot in such a gloomy residence. Gloomy. Gu Qingze didn't know whether to laugh or cry at her description. For a moment, he couldn't refute it, because even he himself felt the same way. Gu Jinglian had grown up in this house, so he did not think much of it. However, when he moved into this house when he was 5 years old, he always felt that the house was too big. Not only did he often get lost, but at night, he always felt that something would emerge from every corner. It was not hard to understand why Bai Hao was so afraid. In the future, we shouldn't decorate in a new Chinese style. Bai Kun couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. Gu Qingze heard this and asked, "What style do you like?" "Northern Europe. If it's a smaller house, the Nordic style will make it look very warm and cozy." Nordic log? Actually, there are many styles in Northern Europe, just like there are many styles in Neo-Chinese. I like Little Northern Europe. It gives people a sober feeling. It's best to have a large area of white walls. When the sun shines in through the windows, the whole house feels very warm. All right, I'll listen to you. Gu Qingze didn't care about the renovation. But I also think that the American style is not bad. Chapter 4700. Gu Qingze didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Okay, you can decorate it in any style you want. He didn't seem to understand Bai Ran's distress. She turned her head and said helplessly, "We only have one house. I like Northern Europe and American styles, so I'm a little conflicted." Gu Qingze suggested, "Our house isn't small, and it's not bad to pick a height. Why don't we decorate it in an American style?" Bai Ran nodded. She had wanted to consider Gu Qingze's opinion. However, she was reluctant to part with the Northern European style that she liked. Gu Qingze knew that she liked Northern Europe, so he said, "When we get older, we'll buy another apartment. It's smaller and it doesn't need to be too big. We'll just decorate it in a Northern European style. What do you think?" "Apartment? Yeah. Why do you want to buy another apartment?" Bai Ran didn't understand. "Isn't one house enough? In the future, if the child studies, we'll buy an apartment opposite the school. That way, it'll be convenient for him to go to and from school." The traffic in the capital was very congested, and there were restrictions on the number of cars. In terms of convenience, if they bought an apartment opposite the school, it would be convenient for the child to go to and from school, and it would also allow the child to sleep well and not worry about being late for the traffic. That's a good suggestion. Bai Ran also thought that it was a good idea. However, when she thought about how he was actually thinking about the child's studies, she blushed and said shyly, "Don't you think it's too early to think about the child?" "Why?" Gu Qingze raised his eyebrows. "We're already married. Is it too late to start thinking about the child after we're married?" "That's true." Bai Ran wanted to bury her burning face in the blanket. She said guiltily, "It hasn't been long since we registered our marriage, and we still..." "Still what?" Gu Qingze saw that she wanted to say something but stopped herself. He reached out and pinched her face, guiding her. "Still what? Tell me." Bai Ran squeezed her palms and said in one go, "We haven't had a wedding yet." For some reason, Gu Qingze's heart warmed when he heard her mention the wedding. This way, he was completely sure of her feelings. She was sure of him. Otherwise, with her conservative personality, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to mention the wedding. Thus, he said, "It's not too late to start preparing for the wedding now." Bai Kong looked at him in surprise. "You like American-style decorations. Then what kind of wedding theme do you like?" Gu Qingze's slender fingers gently twirled her silky hair, his handsome brows raised slightly. "Chinese style? Western style? I think the white wedding dress is not bad. Don't you like the Chinese red veil?" When Bai Yu heard this, he exclaimed, "Do you prefer a traditional wedding?" Gu Qingze said, "It doesn't matter. I just remembered that when my father and mother got married, they held a very traditional Chinese wedding. But a Western-style wedding isn't bad either. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a white wedding gown." As he spoke, his gentle gaze landed on her face. She would definitely look beautiful in her white wedding gown at her wedding. Chapter 4701. Traveling Wedding. Gu Qingze was a little surprised. He was surprised because for a girl, holding a romantic wedding with her family and friends as witnesses, wearing a white veil, and receiving blessings. Wasn't that her biggest dream? Bai Ran did not seem to notice Gu Qingze's surprised expression and said, "My dream is to wear a wedding dress and board a hot air balloon in Turkey with the person I love." Wow, that must be very romantic and exciting. "What about the wedding?" Gu Qingze asked tentatively. "Do you not want to go through with the wedding?" Bai Ran did not speak for a moment. Gu Qingze guessed that she must have a knot in her heart, so he said, "Are you worried about something? Why don't you tell me and see if I can solve it?" Bai Ran looked at him and suddenly sighed. "It's not a knot in my heart. It's just that since we're holding a wedding, we have to invite guests. However, my parents passed away when I was young, so they couldn't personally send me off. Also, I don't have many friends, and I don't get along well with many colleagues." Bai Ran had attended a wedding in the past. Before the wedding, her mother personally combed her daughter's hair, and her father held her hand and personally handed her to the groom. Bai Ran was very touched, but at the same time, she felt a little lonely, because such a scene would never happen to her again. Although the fact that her parents left her was a very distant memory, some scenes and things would inevitably touch her. She also yearned to have a grand wedding of her own. However, if she were to get married alone without her family by her side, she would feel a little lonely. She could not let her uncle and aunt be her, although they were indeed her guardians all these years. However, at the wedding, she did not want to see these two people who had almost ruined her life at all. "I still want to get married like a traveling wedding," Bai Ran said lightly. After a pause, she suddenly said, "However, I still need to hear your opinion on this. Will your parents care about a traveling wedding? If you like a traveling wedding, then let's get married." Gu Qingze did not care about the form of the wedding. Whether it was a trip or a ceremony, it was fine as long as she was the one by his side in the end. "Why don't you ask your mother for her opinion?" Bai Ran considered that many elders would probably not be able to accept a traveling wedding easily. She always felt that there was something wrong with getting married on a trip, and it was also not traditional. Gu Qingze ruffled her hair helplessly. "Idiot, marriage is our business. Why do we have to ask for the elders' opinions? Won't your family mind if we get married while traveling?" Gu Qingze pinched her nose and reminded her, "My house? This is also your home, our home." Okay, I was wrong. I won't say anything wrong about our family in the future." Bai Dan immediately corrected himself seriously. Gu Qingze said, "I'll let them know tomorrow. However, you don't have to think so much." "Yes." Satisfied, Bai Yin fell asleep with him in his arms. It seemed that she was really tired and couldn't care less about the bed. Marriage during a trip? Chapter 4702. Yes, Jean said that she prefers to get married on a trip. After a pause, Gu Qingze continued, "However, getting married on a trip doesn't conflict with the ceremony. It's not a problem to hold the ceremony when we come back. I think Jeaner also wants to hold the ceremony, but with her situation, she might encounter some awkwardness." Awkwardness? Chuho was stunned for a moment and did not understand. What awkwardness? Didn't Jean Er's parents pass away early? Most of her relatives are gone, and she doesn't have any close friends or classmates. Her relationship with her colleagues is also average. She doesn't have many close people. Who will send her off? When Chuho heard this, his lips curled into a smile. "Have you forgotten? When Mom married your mom, there were no parents to send her off. The ceremony was still very successful." Gu Qingze nodded. "Indeed, but I don't remember the wedding process very clearly at that time." Chuho glared at him. "Other than your Jean, what else do you remember clearly?" "I remember that you and Dad hit me." When Chuho heard this, he was angry and helpless. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Can't you remember some good things about people? Mom has too many good things, so it's easy to remember her bad things." Gu Qingze's words were as if they were smeared with honey. Ever since he was young, Chuho was most satisfied with the development of his emotional intelligence. When he was young, he was clumsy, silly, and did not know how to speak. He often bickered with Gu Jinglian, and the father and son quarreled endlessly. The older he grew, the more he learned to say sweet things. People were like this. They only listened to the good things. Only then did he feel satisfied. "All right, if you really want to get married on a trip, it's not impossible. It's not too late to hold the ceremony when you come back. The marriage is between the two of you. You don't have to specifically ask for our opinion. We still have to ask." Gu Qingze cleared his throat. "Otherwise, how can we get back the money that we've given out?" Ever since they were young, Chu Ho and Gu Jinglian had given out millions of yuan. No matter what, He had earned back a huge sum of money. Moreover, Muyaja had made a bet with Gu Jinglian. Whichever family got married first would have to contribute a seven-figure sum. 7 digits. It was very impressive. For this reason, Gu Qingze wanted to hold a proper wedding. If he had nothing to do, he could still make a living in the office. If he got married, he could at least get back an 8-figure sum. At that time, he could use this money to buy a villa. It would be too comfortable. When Chuho heard him say this, he couldn't help but laugh. That's right. Just because of this, we have to hold this wedding. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it. I've contributed so much, so I have to take it back. Yes. Gu Qingze nodded. Then, let's have a Western-style wedding. How about holding it in a church? Chuho asked, what does Roer think? Does she want to get married in a church? She prefers wedding dresses. I think that holding a wedding in a church is both grand and romantic. She should like it. Chuho sighed. It was hard on him to have so many considerations just to give Ro a grand wedding. You guys can discuss it later, as long as your opinions are the most important. Chapter 4703. Gu Qingze nodded and went straight to the point. Will you and Dad sponsor the wedding? Chuho was caught off guard. So after all that talk, he was waiting for her here. Sponsor? Gu Qingze said helplessly. The money I've earned since graduation isn't enough for the wedding. It's already hard enough to renovate the house. Chuho said coldly. What about your salary? I remember that you get dividends at the middle and end of every year. Yes, I do. Gu Qingze said I bought a condominium and invested. If I take out the money from my cash flow and the cash flow breaks, then I'll have earned all these years for nothing. Oh, Chuho asked again. I remember that Yin Tianyu gave you a house. Half a gift. Gu Qingze complained. Luckily, I got married first. If he got married first, I have to borrow money as a wedding gift. Borrow. Chuho's eyes lit up and he said, sponsorship won't work, but I can lend you the wedding expenses. Also, I can discuss with your dad and see if the interest can be lower. Gu Qingze probed, how much is the interest? The annual interest won't be more than 1 cent, so high. Gu Qingze protested. The bank loans are only 9%. Take it or leave it. Okay. Gu Qingze braced himself. I'll lend it. Just write an IOU and give it to your dad. Gu Qingze went upstairs and entered the study to write the IOU. Before writing the IOU, he naturally had to consider the budget for the wedding. First of all, they already had the wedding house. Since it was such a big house, it naturally had to be renovated. The hard and soft decorations would cost at least $500,000 to $600,000. After that, it was time for the invitations and wedding candies. There were so many people in the Gu family. Although they were going to have a Western-style wedding, it was best to choose a church with a big lawn and garden to decorate it properly. Including the buffet and wedding scenery, it would cost $200,000 to $300,000. This was actually a small part. The real big part was the budget for the wedding trip. Although it wasn't a trip around the world, it was still a 1-month trip. It was best to prepare sufficient funds. Bai Chong said that she wanted to go to the seaside. Then, the seaside was famous for its scenic spots. Not only the Maldives and Sri Lanka, but also Saipan. Just the 7 Stars Island in the Maldives alone cost about $50,000 to $60,000 per person per week, not including other expenses. In addition to these coastal countries, there were many other countries that could be visited. Paris, for example, was a place that many girls yearned for even in their dreams. Louvre, Paris, Provence, since they were going to travel and get married, then they should have fun and not leave any regrets. With this calculation, it was another 1 million. In the end, to play it safe, Gu Qingze wrote an IOU for 5 million and went to Gu Jinglian. The moment Gu Jinglian took the IOU, his eyelids twitched violently. 5 million. Chuo had mentioned this to him before. However, the IOU of 5 million was beyond his expectations. I've already agreed on a 10% interest rate. I'll pay it back in 2 years. 5 million. 2 years? Gu Jinglian raised his eyebrows and glanced at him. Are you sure you can pay it back? Chapter 4704. Gu Jinglian snorted coldly. It's good that you know, but 5 million, why is it so much? Gu Qingze's lips curled into a smile as he handed over the list of wedding preparations that he had prepared. Gu Jinglian glanced at it. It was not that Gu Jinglian could not afford a mere 5 million yuan. 5 million was not even worth mentioning to him. But to Gu Chengze, who had just graduated and did not have a strong foundation, 5 million was indeed a little too much. Without the help of his family, he could bear the debt of 5 million and settle it within 2 years. It had to be said that Gu Chengze's courage was far beyond Gu Jinglian's imagination. It was different from other families. The Gu family was especially strict with their sons. Actually, 5 million was just a matter for Gu Linga to act coquettishly. But to Gu Chengze, Gu Linshi, and even Gu Xinghan, it was an astronomical figure. However, no matter who it was, no one would have any objections to this invisible rule. From a young age, Chuho had instilled in the children that the men of the Gu family had to be indomitable even if they left the Gu family. In this world, any dynasty would eventually fall. There is a saying that wealth would not last more than 3 generations. No matter how strong an empire was, there would be a day when it would fall with the replacement of the royal power. Chuho and Gu Jinglian hoped that their sons would succeed, not because they hoped that the Gu family would prosper in the hands of the next generation. They hoped that they could cultivate the ability to withstand setbacks from a young age. A man would only be strong if he had a strong heart. Gu Jinglian looked at it carefully and felt that there was no problem. He said, "You and Jean will only have one wedding in your life. It should be well planned." "Yes." "Then, has father approved it?" "Yes." Gu Jinglian kept the receipt. "It will be in the account in the afternoon." "Okay." Gu Chengze sighed in relief. When he returned to the bedroom, Bai Ran had just woken up. She was rinsing her mouth, brushing her teeth, and washing her face. She walked out of the bathroom and saw Gu Chengze holding his phone as if he was looking up some information. She had no idea that Gu Chengze had already planned their wedding in an orderly manner in just one morning. He had even prepared the funds for the wedding. "What are you looking at?" She walked over and stood next to him. Gu Chengze was looking at various travel guides. She glanced at him and saw that he was reading a holiday guide for the Maldives. "Maldives? Well, didn't you say that you want to travel and get married?" Bai Hao was surprised. "You've already communicated with Mom and Dad?" "Yes," they agreed. "However, I still feel that since there is only one wedding, I still hope to hold a ceremony." Since he said so, Bai Kun naturally agreed. He had already fulfilled her dream of traveling and getting married, so she would definitely support his idea. "A church wedding?" "Yes. I'll take a look at the venue tomorrow. It's best if it's one with a garden and lawn. After the wedding, the guests can have a buffet in the garden." Bai Dan imagined for a moment. She felt that a Western-style wedding in a garden was something that could only be seen in movies. All of a sudden, she was looking forward to the wedding ceremony. It's beautiful just by imagining it. Chapter 4705. Bai Ran said, "Then when are we going on the trip? When is the wedding?" "I'm ready to get ready." "What do you need to prepare?" "Mental preparation is still mental preparation." Bai Ran said, "I want to do some travel homework, such as some guides and notes. When we go on the trip, I want to write a diary." "Oh!" Gu Chengze suddenly thought of something, and his expression fell silent. He looked at Bai Ran and said in a negotiating tone, "Ran, the trip can be any time, but the wedding will have to wait for a while." "Huh? What's wrong?" Gu Chengze said, "I want to wait for a friend to wake up and invite her to our wedding." When Bai Ran heard this, she was a little surprised. "What do you mean? I don't really understand. I have a friend. She's still in a coma and hasn't woken up. I think at least when she wakes up, I want her to witness my wedding. If she's absent, when she wakes up in the future, she'll definitely blame me." When Bai Ran heard this, she suddenly remembered. "I remember. I think I've heard you mention it before. I think her name is Nana, right? I heard it when you guys were chatting. What's going on?" Gu Chengze shook his head. Did something happen? That's why Bai Ran finally mustered up her courage and asked, "At first, I thought that something had happened to her, and she became a vegetable. She's been unconscious, but for what you guys said, it doesn't seem to be the case. I think that no matter what the problem is, medical technology is so advanced now. A solution will definitely be found." "That's true." Gu Chengze frowned. "With Sheng Yu's strength, all the authorities in this field and this world have already been invited to take a look, but they couldn't find any solution. Her vital signs are all normal, but she hasn't woken up, so didn't we say when she would wake up? No one can say for sure. Guqing's aside. Even so, I still want to wait for a while. The few of us grew up together. Everyone has agreed that no matter how big the matter is, as long as it's any of our weddings, we can't be absent. I don't want her to be absent, and I want to wait a little longer. I think that maybe she'll wake up soon. In short, I still have some hope. Bai Ran gently covered the back of his hand and smiled. Then, I'll wait for her with you. No matter what, they had to wait for her to wake up before getting married. After all, this was something that everyone had agreed on. As for the wedding, it wouldn't be too late to wait until she woke up. Wouldn't that be more meaningful? You don't mind? Why should I mind? On the contrary, I feel that you are very sentimental. Blushing, Bai Ran said, I like it very much. Hearing this, Guqingzi reached out and gently pinched her cheek. Jua, thank you. What are you thanking me for? I'm your wife. No matter what you think, I'll definitely be the first to support it. Also, I think that when your friend wakes up, our wedding will be more meaningful. Bai Kun's understanding made Guqingzi extremely touched. He knew that Bailey was also looking forward to the wedding, but he still wanted to wait for Natalia to wake up. Chapter 4706. Bai Ran had always wanted to meet the girl whom Guqingzi mentioned was in a coma. Guqingzi agreed, too. That night, after the two of them had dinner, Guqingzi brought Bai Ran to the hospital. It was still the same ward. Through the door, they could see the nurse guarding the bed. There was a fresh bouquet of flowers at the head of the bed. The curtains were gently drawn, so they could not see the person lying on the bed. Bai Ran glanced at Guqingzi and asked softly, Can we go in? Wait a moment. Let me ask. Guqingzi pushed the door open and consciously knocked on the door. The nurse immediately stood up and looked at Guqingzi with a smile. Master Gu, what brings you here today? I want to see Nana. With that, Guqingzi pushed Bai Ran to the nurse and smiled. This is my wife. Her name is Bai Ran. Hello, Mrs. Gu. The nurse greeted her politely. Bai Ran nodded in return. Guqingzi asked, Is it convenient to come in now? After all, there was a difference between men and women. Natalia was often in bed, so he had to be more cautious about her. The nurse said, Master Gu, wait for me for a while. I'll cover her with the blanket. As she spoke, she walked to the bed and covered Natalia with a blanket. Only then did she let Guqingzi and Bai Ran into the ward. As soon as the two of them entered the ward, the nurse gently pulled the curtain open. At that moment, under the moonlight, Natalia's beautiful and refined face was reflected in Bai Ran's eyes. Bai Ran had never seen such a beautiful girl. She had exquisite facial features and beautiful hair. Even though she was in a coma for so long and looked a little haggard, she did not look disheveled under the meticulous care. Even in a hospital gown, it could not conceal her beauty. Bai Ran was stunned for a moment. Guqingzi held her hand and walked to the bed. Bai Ran was so shocked that she could not recover from her shock. Too beautiful. Bai Ran originally imagined that, given how outstanding Yin Tianyu was, the person in his heart should be a very outstanding girl too. Judging from her face alone, her exquisite face was indeed stunning under the moonlight. Guqingzi smiled. She's lost a lot of weight. Otherwise, she wouldn't look so haggard. Bai Kun recovered from his shock and said helplessly, There's nothing we can do about it. After all, she's been unconscious and can't eat normally. Her energy is also limited, so she looks a little thin, but it's okay. When she wakes up, she'll be well nourished and she'll slowly recover. At the mention of waking up, Guqingzi and the caregiver's expressions darkened at the same time. At first, he still had some hope that Natalia would regain her consciousness, but now, he felt that his hopes were dwindling. Guqingzi did not know if Yu could wait until Natalia woke up. Although they seemed to be confident that she would wake up sooner or later, everyone felt a little uncertain in their hearts. In the beginning, he still believed that she would wake up. As time passed, she slept longer and longer. None of the authoritative experts dared to make any assertions. As a result, Guqingzi gradually lost his confidence. From the initial conviction to the subsequent confusion, he prayed. Whitehaze looked at Natalia in silence. He felt sorry for her. Chapter 4707. Gu Qingze nodded and said, "Yeah, she's asleep. She'll wake up one day." Just as he finished speaking, footsteps were heard from outside the door. Bai Yong heard the footsteps and turned around to see two people standing at the door. Because they were facing away from the light and the corridor, she couldn't see them clearly. She could only vaguely feel that they were two men. One was about 1.9 meters tall, and the other was about 1.8 meters tall. When the two men walked in and Bai Yong saw one of the men, she gasped and her mouth fell open in shock. Hua! Hua! When the two men walked into the room, the man's beautiful face was revealed under the moonlight. Bai Yong was even more shocked. Oh my God! It was Hua Jin. This man had practically taken over her childhood memories. Gu Xingze and Hua Jin were her two favorite childhood names. Unfortunately, Gu Xingze had passed away when she was very young due to an unknown accident. Even though she didn't know the reason, she still felt that Gu Xingze's death was a pity. Hua Jin, on the other hand, was the superstar after Gu Xingze. He was also the expected successor. Almost everyone agreed that Hua Jin was the only one who could take over Gu Xingze's position. And Hua Jin didn't disappoint. Over the years, he had acted in many classic television dramas. Because of his high ratings and reputation, Hua Jin began to develop his career in the film industry. At the age of 28, he became the youngest person after Gu Xingze to win 2 Best Actor awards. After winning 2 Best Actor awards at the Golden Chapter Film Festival and the 100 Flowers Film Festival, Hua Jin officially announced his retirement from the entertainment industry. At that time, there was an uproar. Everyone couldn't understand why he would retire from the entertainment industry at the peak of his career. At the age of 28, he had won 2 Best Actor awards. His dazzling path to stardom had just begun. After winning 2 Best Actor awards, Hua Jin's net worth had almost doubled. Other than that, he had also been offered more outstanding scripts and advertising contracts. At this moment, he was the epitome of glory that many people could not hope to achieve. At this moment, it was as if a myriad of things had gathered on him. Yet, at a time like this, he inexplicably announced his retirement. Many people suspected that Hua Jin's announcement was just a publicity stunt. After all, as an artist, he wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. Hua Jin had settled down for so long, and now that he had finally achieved Gu Xingze's success, it was only natural that he should strike while the iron was hot. Yet, he said he wanted to retire. This time, there were no scandals and nothing much happened. There was no news that he was going to get married or have a rumored girlfriend. He was actually going to retire. The fans were extremely upset. Many of them were wringing their hands and sighing, but some still felt that Hua Jin would return sooner or later. Who would have thought that he would really retire from the entertainment industry? He held a grand press conference to announce his retirement and apologize to his fans. As an idol, he wasn't able to walk with them to the end. After the press conference, the fans cried. Some gave their blessings, while others didn't understand. After this, there was no more news about Hua Jin. Chapter 4708. Hua Jin. Is that Hua Jin? She nervously grabbed Gu Qingze's arm and asked in trepidation, "Am I seeing things?" "It's actually Hua Jin." Gu Qingze laughed. "Yes, you're not seeing things. It's Hua Jin." Impossible. Bai Kun slapped his face a few times, but he still couldn't come back to his senses. Am I dreaming? Why am I seeing Hua Jin here? At this moment, Hua Jin had already walked over with another man beside him. He was tall and had exquisite features. His pair of almond-shaped eyes gave him a devilish charm. Hua Jin was already very tall to her, but the man beside him was so much taller than Hua Jin that she had to raise her head to look at him. She was dumbfounded when she saw the two of them walk in together. Gu Qingze politely greeted, "Uncle Rong, Uncle Jie." Gong Jin nodded slightly before his gaze landed on Bai Yu. "This is Yu Er. Let me formally introduce you. This uncle is Gong Jie, Yin Tianyou's uncle. I'll call him Uncle. This is Hua Jin. Yes, he's your former idol, Hua Jin. Actually, his surname is Rong. Hua Jin is just his stage name. You can follow me and call him Uncle Rong." Bai Yu blushed instantly. "Uncle Jie, Uncle Rong," she obediently greeted them. She was so nervous in front of her former idol that she did not know where to place her hands. Gu Qingze then introduced her to Hua Jin and Gong Jie. "This is Yu Er, my wife." Gong Jie raised a brow. "Your new wife?" Hua Jin could not help laughing. "What do you mean by new wife? Why does this sound so awkward?" As the three of them exchanged pleasantries, Bai Yu felt that she could not hear anything clearly. Her mind was filled with suspicion. Why would Hua Jin appear here for no reason? Furthermore, so many years had passed. But why did Hua Jin give her the feeling that he hadn't changed at all? He was still the same as he was in the past. The only difference was that he gave off a much more mature and steady feeling. Bai Ran suddenly moved closer to Gu Qingze and whispered, "Am I really not dreaming? Why are they here?" "Because they're Natalia's guardians." "They?" Bai Hao turned to look at Hua Jin and then at Gong Jie. He didn't understand. "I'll talk to you later." Hua Jin didn't hear what they were talking about, so he asked, "Is Nana still unconscious?" Gu Qingze nodded lightly. "It's still the same." Hua Jin's eyes were filled with disappointment. He walked to the bed and sat beside it. He gently held Natalia's hand, his heart aching. Gong Jie stood beside the bed silently. Looking at Natalia's still pale face, his eyes revealed a hidden sense of disappointment. Gu Qingze held Bai Yu's hand and left the ward silently. Outside the corridor, Bai Yu looked at him curiously, waiting for him to explain. The two of them, it couldn't be what she was thinking, right? "What are you thinking?" Bai Yu blushed and stammered. "I was thinking that the two of them couldn't be a couple, right?" "Yes." Biz. Chapter 4709. Bai Hao sucked in a breath of cold air. "Oh, God." She widened her eyes in disbelief. Is this true? Why? Do you have any thoughts?" "It's not that I have any thoughts." Bai Ran said honestly, "I actually think sexual orientation isn't a big deal. Men and women are the same. But maybe it's because it happened to my idol that I'm surprised." "Idol?" This time, it was Gu Qingze's turn to be surprised. "So, Uncle Rong is your idol? You're his fan?" "Yes, I used to like Hua Jin and his celebrity, but unfortunately, he's no longer around." Gu Qingze suddenly stopped in his tracks and stopped moving. Bai Ran took a few steps forward and was surprised when he suddenly stopped. "What's wrong?" "No, nothing. You said you have another idol. Who is it?" "Ah," Bai Ran recalled seriously. "Gu Qingze. Actually, my memories of Qingze are really distant. I remember that when I was very young, he passed away in an accident. After he announced his retirement from the entertainment industry, he met with an accident. Later, when I looked back at the news, many people said that it wasn't a simple accident, but a conspiracy. At that time, they said that Yun Shishir implicated Gu Qingze and was his nemesis. When I was young, I watched his movies and television dramas. At that time, I just thought that this man was really handsome and I liked him so much. After I grew up, I learned to understand him through various channels and realized that after I got to know him better, he was really a childish idol. It's just a pity that he died so young." Sigh. After a pause, Bai Ran suddenly thought of something. "Speaking of which, your name and Qingze's are only one word apart. Also, you look quite similar." No wonder she felt an inexplicable sense of closeness to him. Gu Qingze hesitated for a while before saying, "Actually, according to seniority, he's my uncle. But unfortunately, I don't think I've seen him before." "Your uncle?" Bai Hao petrified and gazed at him for a long time. "Yes, he's my father's biological younger brother, but in the Gu family, he's an illegitimate child. In a more traditional way, he's the son of a concubine. Therefore, he has always been exiled and has never revealed his close relationship with the Gu family to the outside world." After a pause, Gu Qingze said honestly, "My name was given to me by my father in memory of him. Didn't you notice? My younger brother, Gu Xinghan, has the word Xing in his name, so it's also to commemorate him. Xinghan. Qingze, it adds up to Xingzhe." Ugh, Bai Hao was still bewildered. He didn't react for a long time. She lowered her head, suddenly not knowing what to say. Her childhood idol was actually her husband's uncle? Her husband was actually her idol's nephew. What kind of fate was this? No wonder. Other than their names, Gu Qingze was similar to Gu Xingze in both appearance and temperament. Actually, Gu Qingze looked more like Chu Ho, but he also resembled Gu Jinglian. Chapter 4710. Gu Jinglian and Gu Xingze were half-brothers. Therefore, although Gu Qingze and Gu Xingze looked similar, they were not so similar that one could recognize them at a glance. Therefore, Bai was extremely surprised. When did you find out? Probably when I was in junior high school. I saw his name in the ancestral hall once. Out of curiosity, I asked and found out that Gu Xingze was my uncle. Bai nodded. Gu Xingze sighed. I always felt that it was a pity for my uncle. Dad gave me this name to commemorate him. Is it for some kind of continuation? You can say that. Gu Xingze thought for a while. I rarely hear my dad talk about my uncle. However, I can tell that when he does talk about him, there's a hint of regret and guilt in his voice. Guilt? Yes. Why is he guilty? Why you did not quite understand this point? Because Dad felt that he was too harsh on him in the past. Therefore, after my uncle passed away, he felt that it was a pity. We were born from the same root. After all, there was still some affection between us. Bai did not know why, but she felt a little heavy. The death of her idol was a sad thing. Now that she mentioned it again, she still felt a little heavy. I hope that he will be happy in his next life. I hope that there will be a next life. On the way home, Bai suddenly became much less talkative. She looked blankly out of the window, and her mind was filled with thoughts. On one hand, she was thinking about when Natalia would wake up. On the other hand, she was shocked. She did not expect to see her idol under such circumstances. Until now, she had not recovered from her shock. In the ward, Gong Jie and Hua Jin sat by the bed and looked at Natalia lying on the bed. Looking at her pale face, they were extremely sad. Hua Jin looked at Gong Jie and said sadly, Nana has been unconscious for so long. Qingze is already married. Did you hear what he said just now? He wants to wait until Nana wakes up before holding the wedding. Gong Jie said half jokingly and half seriously, I hope Nana won't keep Qingze waiting for too long. Hua Jin nodded. He gently placed his hand on the back of Natalia's hand. The cool sensation made his heart ache even more. Why is his hand so cold? He picked up her hand, blew on it a few times, rubbed it gently, and held it in his palm. Some time ago, he and Gong Jie had gone abroad to find a few experts in this field. However, no one could say for sure about Natalia's situation. How many years had it been? Natalia's situation hadn't improved at all. Gong Jie looked at Hua Jin's distressed expression and felt sorry for him. Apart from feeling sorry for Natalia, he also felt sorry for Hua Jin. All these years, for Natalia's sake, Hua Jin had been running around asking for help, trying to find a way to cure her illness. Back then, Hua Jin had retired from the entertainment industry. On one hand, it was because he had already won 2 Best Actor awards. He was satisfied. On the other hand, it was because of Natalia. He wanted to leave the entertainment industry completely so that he could have more time to take care of Natalia. However, to everyone's surprise, Natalia's condition worsened all of a sudden. It worsened so quickly that she still hadn't woken up. Many people advised them to give up. But, Chapter 4711. Gu Qingze and Bai Ran had already agreed to hold the wedding after Natalia woke up. However, before that, they could start their trip first. Gu Qingze had already planned his trip meticulously. The first stop of the trip was Hong Kong. After that, they would take a flight from Hong Kong to Paris. At first, Bai Ran's impression of Hong Kong was that it was filled with skyscrapers and skyscrapers. After that, it would probably be a paradise for shopping maniacs. When they were waiting for the plane, Bai Ran was actually a little nervous. Gu Qingze was a little curious. He thought that she had never been on a plane before. Bai Ran had also forgotten if she had ever been on a plane before. When she was young, she had already forgotten if she had ever been on a plane before. However, after her parents passed away, she had never been on a plane again. Other than the summer and winter camps held by her school, as well as the spring and autumn outings, she had never gone out to have fun. Therefore, when she was on the plane, it was obvious that she was a little nervous. The flight from the capital to the airport was a little long. When she first boarded the plane, Bai Ran was still a little nervous. Other than nervousness, she was also a little excited. When the plane took off, she leaned against the window. Because it happened to be evening when the plane took off, when the plane passed through the hazy clouds, she could see the rose-red sunset at a glance. The layers of sunset glow were like an oil painting. With the passage of time, it slowly changed from a rose color to a mellow wine red. At first glance, it was as if the clouds were on fire. It was as beautiful as a painting. The setting sun was like golden dust falling down, embellishing the sea of clouds. It penetrated the sea of clouds, sparkling and mottled, making it difficult for people to distinguish whether this was a painting or a beautiful dream. Byran leaned against the window and looked at the beautiful scenery in a daze. For a long time, she could not sit up straight. Gu Qingze looked helplessly at her, admiring the sunset. Just now, he still remembered that when they were in the waiting hall, he had told her that after the plane took off, it happened to be evening. The sunset was the most beautiful time. The beautiful sunset scenery from the plane was rarely seen on the ground. However, Byran did not think much of it. She did not expect that it would be a large-scale scene. Isn't it beautiful? Beautiful. Just now, someone said that there was no beautiful scenery to enjoy on the plane and didn't think much of it. Now it seems like so beautiful. Byran didn't care about his joke anymore. The beautiful sunset flashed by, and she didn't want to miss even a minute. She picked up her phone and took a series of photos of the beautiful scenery. Seeing this, Gu Qingze immediately snatched her phone away. Bai Yin was startled. "What are you doing? Real beautiful scenery is not recorded with a phone." "What do you mean?" Gu Qingze reached out and pulled her face back. Looking out the window, he whispered into her ear, "Idiot, of course I'm using my eyes to capture it." Indeed, Byran was admiring the beautiful scenery outside the window. At the same time, he realized that no matter how beautiful the scenery was, it would be difficult to look at it again, even if he took a picture with his phone. However, the beauty that was recorded with the eyes was rooted in the bottom of one's heart, and one would never forget it. So beautiful, such a beautiful scene could not be captured with a mobile phone. But what if I suddenly forget about such a beautiful scenery? Chapter 47:12. If you've forgotten, I'll take you on the evening flight again and let you see it to your heart's content. His doting tone made Bai Yan feel flattered. She had always felt Gu Qingze's love for her. However, she felt that she was being spoiled by him unconditionally. "If I want to see the sunset, you'll take me on the plane. If I want to see the stars in the sky, will you pluck them for me?" She was only joking, but he actually considered it seriously. "Do you know how big a star is? Isn't it the size of a grain of rice?" Haha. The small debris from the collision between stars can become meteorites and smash a hole in the earth. Gu Qingze gestured seriously. Comparing it to a star is like comparing a speck of dust to a mountain. "Really?" Bai Yan widened her eyes in disbelief. "A star is that big?" Very big." Gu Qingze continued. "Also, do you know, a star alone might be as big as a galaxy." Bai Yan listened very seriously. Originally, her concept of a star was just a diamond in the night sky. However, after Gu Qingze's explanation, she realized that humans were such insignificant creatures. The Earth and the Sun are just small units in a galaxy. Guess how big a galaxy is? It's definitely bigger than the Sun and the stars combined. After Gu Qingze's serious explanation, Bai Yan realized how unreasonable it was for her to ask him to pluck the stars. Although it was a joke, she was still shocked by Gu Qingze's explanation. She suddenly became interested and did not care about the scenery outside the window. Coincidentally, Gu Qingze had also done some research on astronomy. On the plane, the two of them started to discuss the mysteries of the universe. Gu Qingze was very interested in the universe and astronomy. When he was in university, if he did not consider preparing to take over the Gu Corporation in the future, he would have enrolled in the astronomy department without hesitation. Although he studied economics, he made friends with a group of classmates who were interested in astronomy. During his second year in university, he pestered Chu Ho to give him a reflecting telescope. It was still hidden in his apartment. Usually, such a precious object would be covered with a cover, so Bai Kun did not notice her. She didn't touch the things in his room. She only knew that there was something covered by a white cover, but she didn't expect that the thing inside the cover was actually used to observe the stars. "So, it's a reflecting telescope?" "Yes. Then I can also look at the stars in the sky through a telescope in the future?" Gu Qingze nodded. "As long as you want to." Astronomy was a particularly mysterious thing. At first, most people's most intuitive reaction to astronomy was probably, isn't it just a few stars? It was black and glowing. No matter how he looked at it, it was nothing more than that. However, once one entered the field of astronomy and slowly delved into it, one would find that astronomy was really a fascinating field. Other than broadening his horizons, if Yunshi was good, he would be able to observe the stars of the universe, something that ordinary people would never have the chance to see. Gu Qingze had always treasured this telescope, and it was impossible to buy it on the market. Chapter 47:13. It was not a long flight from the capital to Hong Kong. However, it was already evening by the time they boarded the plane. When they arrived in Hong Kong, it was already nighttime. On the plane, after the initial excitement, Bai Ran was already sleepy. She slept for a while on the plane. Because it was first class, the privacy and soundproofing were good, so she slept peacefully. The chair could be put down, covered with a blanket, and slept especially comfortably with the air conditioner. It was not much worse than the zero-pressure bed in a five-star hotel. So much so that Gu Qingze could not bear to wake her up when she slept so soundly. When the plane was about to land, even though he could not bear to, he still gently woke her up. When the plane landed, it was already past 2 in the morning. Bai Ran was in a daze. She had slept for 3 to 4 hours on the plane. Moreover, her biological clock was always on time. When she got off the plane, she was a little unsteady. It seemed that the beautiful trip in her imagination was a little too tiring to just sit on a plane. Bai Ran had not traveled much and did not know that flying was so tiring. Although he had slept comfortably, he was still a little annoyed when he was woken up halfway through his sweet sleep. Gu Qingze hugged her shoulders and coaxed her gently. Be good. When we reach the hotel, take a shower before you sleep. But I'm afraid I won't be sleepy after the shower. At that time, she would be refreshed after taking a bath. He would be sleepy and fall asleep immediately. What should she do in the long night? But if she slept directly when they reached the hotel, then although she and Gu Qingze were already married, because it was a flash marriage, she still felt that they were just dating. There was no sense of a wedding ceremony at all, just like a couple in love. But if they were in love, they had to pay attention to their image. In the past, if she was very tired from work, she would fall asleep on the bed when she reached home. She did not have to worry about whether she showered or not. It was the same if she woke up early the next day to shower. But in front of Gu Qingze, she still had to pay attention to her image. This was instinctive. Gu Qingze smiled. If you can't sleep, I'll coax you to sleep. What if I can't sleep after you coax me? Then, Gu Qingze suddenly smiled mysteriously. Then let's do something meaningful. Bai Kun's face suddenly turned red. He suddenly realized what he meant by meaningful, and his face was burning. You? What are you doing? What are you thinking? Gu Qingze wanted to tease her and smiled playfully. What did you think of? Why is your face so red? Bai Ran felt that he had fallen into a trap. He looked at him helplessly and then lowered his head to study his phone. There's no signal on my phone. Give me the phone. Gu Qingze shrugged. Bai Yan handed the phone to him with a blank expression. What are you doing? Idiot. Of course it's to change to a Hong Kong mobile phone card. Bai Ran was a little puzzled. Can't a domestic SIM card find a signal in Hong Kong? Roaming is a waste of phone bills. Bai Ran looked at Gu Qingze in surprise. Chapter 47:14. It's a little strange. Bai Ran said, half jokingly, half seriously, I think you're a thrifty housewife. It's not a feeling, it's a fact. Your husband is indeed a thrifty man. After a pause, Gu Qingze continued, Is this something that surprises you? Yeah. Bai Ran nodded seriously. Actually, I thought about it carefully. I still remember going to your house when I was young. I don't know if it was your birthday or something. I used to think that your family background was above average, like the middle class. When Gu Qingze first transferred to their class, Bai Ran felt that Gu Qingze should be from the middle class based on his clothes. That's because most of the children in the class came from the middle class. At that time, the kindergarten that Bai Ran and Gu Qingze attended was considered to be quite good in the capital. However, when they actually arrived at Gu Qingze's house, Bai Ran sighed. His family lived in such a luxurious and huge mansion. Although the children in kindergarten did not have the concept of class, On the way home, Byran heard her mother exclaim more than once that Guching's family background was one of the best in the capital, let alone in the class or school. At that time, I always heard from my mother that your family background was very good. She told me to be careful when I was with you. Why? I don't know. Byran was also confused. At that time, my mother kept talking about the Gu family in the capital. At that time, I didn't know what the adults were thinking. I only knew that you were fun to play with, so I was willing to play with you. However, I never observed your family background. But after I grew up, including now, my impression of you is that you are a young master from a wealthy family. But looking at your daily expenses, you have always been very diligent and thrifty. Most young masters spend money extravagantly. But in fact, your family background is one of the best in the capital, right? But I feel that you're very careful with your money. You're the kind of spend money where it's needed. Yes. Guching's have filled in the SIM card into her phone and returned it to her. Here, it's done. Have you been so thrifty since you were young? Guching's pursed his lips and said calmly, when I was young, I didn't have any concept of money. I lived a hard life with my mother. I don't have any concept of the hardships involved. Actually, my mindset wasn't instilled in me by anyone. It was my father's request. Ever since I became an adult, other than tuition fees and basic living expenses, I had to earn anything I wanted. Me too, Baihao continued, but I'm different from you. I don't have such conditions, but you do. I actually understand my father's good intentions. He felt that it was better to teach someone how to fish than to give them a fish. If we rely on the Gu family's wealth, although I don't know how impressive the Gu family's assets